As Europe bakes as a result of the third heat wave since June, many fear that extreme drought driven by climate change will dent stable crop yields in the breadbasket nations and deepen the cost of living crisis. After France and parts of England saw their driest July on record, the European Commission has urged the EU member states to reuse treated urban wastewater to irrigate the continent's parched farms. And in France, where the drought has hammered the farmers, widespread limits on freshwater use have been placed. In France, this July was the driest month since March 1961. The southwestern region of Gironde, already devastated by last month's wildfires, saw a maximum temperature of 39.6 degrees Celsius, with Meteo France predicting a peak on Thursday. Farmers have been reporting difficulties in feeding livestock because of the parched grasslands. Irrigation has been banned in large areas of the northwest and southeast due to the freshwater shortages. France is the fourth largest exporter of wheat and among the top exporters of maize globally. Poor harvests due to drought may further increase the pressure on the grain supplies after Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused global shockwaves.
Il y a 2 semaines, l'eau arrivait à peu près à cette hauteur-là.
2 weeks ago, the water was reaching about this height, so we have lost about an inch a day. If it continues in this way in 2 weeks, given that there is little or no precipitation expected, we will lose between 10 and 15 centimeters, which means that when the pedal boats that you see there will end up lying in the sand.
Finiront posés dans le sable.
Outside the Garnier Opera House in Paris, the heat radiating off the ground hit a staggering 56 degrees Celsius. In cities, areas like this are called urban heat islands, and trees are a key line of defense against the heat waves. Most cities are deprived of trees that can cool them down.
You
can immediately understand what is going on when there are trees, actually a group of trees, because a single tree cannot do much on its own, poor thing. So when you align trees creating dense shade, straight away you can breathe.
Ça devient respirable.
Meanwhile, the Paris City Hall wants to create islands of freshness and plans to plant about 170,000 trees by 2026. In many schoolyards, concrete is being removed to make way for soil and vegetation. However, these plans have sparked protests. Ecology campaigners saying that the local authorities have been felling scores of decades-old trees to make way for garden spaces. City Hall's urban planners saying that Paris cannot be redesigned to better confront climate change without felling some trees. Climate activists disagree. According to them, old trees have a key role to play in fighting climate change.
These trees had a role to play in fighting heat and purifying air. They were in great shape because at 50 or 60 years old, a hackberry tree or a plane tree is almost never sick. It is important to understand that. They are fully equipped to defend themselves from diseases, fungi and insects. And so, we saw these trees being felled behind fences.
Climate scientists overwhelmingly agree that carbon emissions from humans burning fossil fuels are heating the planet, which is in turn increasing the risk and severity of droughts, heat waves and other extreme weather-related events. Portugal and Poland have asked citizens to cut down on water use to ease the pressure. The European Commission has warned that several countries, including France, Romania, Spain, Portugal and Italy, will experience reduced crop yield in 2022. According to the scientists, as the planet's climate warms up, heat waves are expected to become more frequent and intense. With me on the broadcast this minute is Tanya Martha Thomas, Research Officer at Climate Chance. live from Paris. Thanks very much, Tanya, for being here with us. If you can elaborate, first of all, on these water restriction measures that have been put in place and the impact that they are having on agricultural production.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me. So when we talk about water restriction measures, these have been taking place as part of the drought plan in France, which works through the departments, or rather the districts as we call them here, throughout the country. And the region surrounding Paris, which is where I am right now, and the Île-de-France region, which is the surrounding areas, have been the least affected in terms of these measures, where they're at the lowest level of the alert, where what is encouraged is for citizens to save water by reducing the water that they use for watering green spaces, for washing their vehicles, and so on. Whereas other regions and other departments in France have varying levels of this alert, be it the yellow alert, the orange alert, or the red alert. And with the yellow and orange levels, there have been restrictions on the use of water for agricultural purposes, which happens to be the largest source of water consumption in the country, but also on aquatic activities and on the watering of gardens and green spaces and so on. While in the red alert areas, the restrictions are rather extreme in the sense that all non-priority uses of water have been prohibited, including the use of water for agriculture. And all that's allowed is the use of water for health, civil security, sanitation, and drinking. So it's quite a situation of crisis right now. And of course, the largest foreseeable impact this has had is on agricultural yields, notably on that of corn, because this year in July, it's been the rainfall that the country has received has been 84% less than what is usually seen in the month of July, than the average for the month of July. And this has had a great impact on corn yields, as July is one of the most crucial parts in the growth cycle of the crop, with what is classified as good to excellent plots for the cultivation of corn, dropping from 75% of all plots to 68% in less than a week's time, which is quite drastic. And this is something that has been foreseen as early as May. This was predicted. And now we're seeing the effects of this as the country sort of channels its water resources towards the more dire needs.
Right. Tanya, given the way things are at this point, what more can be done, according to you, and how could the authorities have been better prepared to deal with this situation?
That's a great question. It's always interesting to look back once the crisis happens to see what could have been done. And I think at the moment, the entire strategy revolves around the idea of sufficiency, or sobriété, as they call it in French, which is more of a demand-side measure, which is working with citizens and with companies and local governments to make sure that the demand for water is being controlled by controlling our behavior and how we use water. And right now, that seems to be the only measure that can be taken. However, a more well-rounded water strategy, such as ones that we've studied through our work at Climate Chance, would be ones that include both technical and behavioral interventions, and that work with local governments right from the grassroots to ensure that there is behavioral change and demand management, but also at the same time, supply augmentation through ensuring more diverse water sources. And this would be according to the local context in each department, because some of them are coastal. They could resort to desalinization, whereas others could do more of urban water reuse, as you had mentioned earlier today, and reusing used water through water treatment plants is something that is also an important part of this strategy for preparedness.
Right.
And on the agricultural side, the government has, in fact, allowed water agencies, water authorities in the different regions to use up to an additional 100 million euros this year to help these regions adapt their agriculture to climate change. But as we know, this process of adaptation is also rather long-term. So right now, it all hinges on how we forecast and observe the weather changes and how we're able to adapt to those.
Right. Tanya, thanks very much for joining us on the broadcast and sharing those inputs and perspectives. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.